Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. My name is Paul, the Canadian Snowman, back here once again with some more awesome history videos. Sultanate of women in the Ottoman Empire. For those of you who are new, I've done a whole bunch of videos, probably like 25 videos or so around there on Ottoman history. So I would definitely check that playlist out if you clicked on this video, then this kind of thing, I guess, is your kind of thing. So I would definitely check out the rest of the playlist. But I believe this is the last video on this playlist. I don't think it has anything to do with, I guess, the timeline, or maybe it does. I'm guessing just maybe what about Ottoman women, what they brought to offer, or maybe it's just a sultanate of women. I don't know, or I guess the place they hold in the society, or sultan. Can a woman be a sultan? I don't know. I don't know. But I don't know. I'm definitely interested. I have no idea. I have no idea what to expect in this. I don't think there's any battles or anything like that. I think it's just kind of maybe an insight of someone, or just women in general. I don't know. But anyways, we're gonna check it out. Please hit that like and subscribe button below. I'd really appreciate it. And we're gonna jump into it.
Politically speaking, especially after the conquest of Constantinople, and despite its vast territories in Asia and Africa, the Ottoman Empire was essentially a European power. However, in terms of the cultural belonging of the Ottoman,
Who are you? You look vaguely familiar.
What happened?
Politically speaking, especially after the conquest of Constantinople, and despite its vast territories in Asia and Africa, the Ottoman Empire was essentially a European power.
Yeah.
However, in terms of more of a mix of Turkic and Islamic.
Sorry, it seemed to jump there for a second, so I'm gonna apologize.
Cultural belonging of the Ottoman Empire and its impact over the state bureaucracy, the matters of dynastic succession, and relations between the political actors of the realm, the Sublime Porte was undoubtedly different from Europe and was more of a mix of Turkic and Islamic traditions and laws.
Okay.
In Europe, different royal families were in a constant cycle of marriage alliances, and spouses of kings and emperors of Europe were of royal descent. This was radically different in the Ottoman Empire, as for a very long time, the sultans would not have.
This is definitely interesting to me, because kind of figured it was the same thing. I know there's a sultan that basically if you weren't the heir, you're gonna die, kind of thing. Didn't he have 25 kids executed or something? I forget. It feels like it's been forever, but I know it hasn't been that long. Something crazy like that. But anyways, I'm sorry.
Different in the Ottoman Empire, as for a very long time, the sultans would not have legal wives, but have numerous concubines living in the harem who would provide the Ottoman dynasty with heirs. The sponsor of this video, Established Titles, is perfect if you want to gift a title or get it for yourself. Established Titles is a project based on a historic Scottish medieval custom. Charities such as One Tree Planting. EstabliskedTitles.com/KG. Related males are prohibited from entering it. The word itself is derived from the Arabic haram, which means forbidden. In the Ottoman Empire, the harem housed the sultan's concubines, mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, and other relatives, along with their children and the servants working there, including eunuchs who oversaw the proper operation of the harem. The primary purpose of the harem.
Eunuchs. Only time I've heard that word is in Game of Thrones. I'm guessing the eunuchs don't have a member down there, or is that just the dude from Game of Thrones? I'm sorry, but that's the only place I really heard that before. That just means you don't have a balls or a dick, or I'm sorry, I'm offending anybody, but that's kind of what I understand, just because from Game of Thrones, I'm assuming. Oversee things. just so I guess a person that they can trust that's not gonna like mess around with their women kind of thing.
Was to ensure the continuity of the royal dynasty and provide a sultan with heirs. The concubines and servants of the harem were usually women taken as war spoils from lands conquered by the Ottomans, or sometimes gifted to the sultan as a token of respect or as an attempt to get favor. The majority of these women were Christian, who would convert to Islam, and they would receive rigorous training on knitting, cooking, playing musical instruments, dancing, poetry, court manners, Quran reading, and more, amidst a military-like discipline. The harem was headed by the Walida Sultan, the sultan's mother, who decided which of the harem's women were ready to entertain her son. A sultan could have a relationship with 4 women at a time. Such women would be called a kadin, which would literally mean a woman, but could also mean a wife in this context. The title of Iqbal would be given to the favorite women of the sultan. In order to limit the potential power of women, the harem's women were allowed to bear only 1 child for the sultan. After the male offspring of the sultan came of age, they were sent to act as governors of the Ottoman provinces, together with their mothers, to learn the craft of governance, along.
I was gonna say like the jealousy amongst them, like would be pretty. I think would be pretty insane. I say that's just kind of like women get jealous. I guess. I mean, I guess guys do get jealous as well, but I guess the whole mother overseeing, overseeing everything, and the fact that you only have 1 kid basically just destroys that. It's like they have a kid, and then I guess I don't know what the women do after that. I guess they kind of move on and do their own thing after that kind of deal. I don't know what becomes of them. I don't think they would kill them. But wow, it's definitely interesting. So you basically a sultan could have so many kids because you have a big harem and so many kids by so many different wives over a long period of time. Wow, that's pretty insane. But I'm pretty sure there was an episode where, like, if you're not the first one, like the first boy, I mean, the first boy that takes power ends up killing like all his other pretty much siblings. I guess it would be like half siblings, right? That wasn't that a thing? I mean, it might have been just that one guy, that one sultan that did that. I'm not sure. Anyways, sorry. Interesting.
Ottoman provinces, together with their mothers, to learn the craft of governance, along with possibly minimizing the potential of the mothers to meddle in politics. Their potential heirs to the Ottoman throne would be brought up by their mothers, who would often exert a very high degree of influence over their sons.
Okay, they don't die. They move on to be governors and stuff, and their mother goes along with them. Makes sense. At least the sultan doesn't have to worry about the drama having the woman around. They go off with their son. Okay.
Usually, sultans had minimal contact with their sons since they lived far from the capital.
Right.
The Ottoman Empire's succession rules were different from the European monarchies, as the firstborn male son was not an automatic choice. Sultans would refrain from naming their heirs, but often gave provinces closer to the capital to their preferred sons, which allowed them to get news of the death of the sultan first and to proclaim themselves sultan before their brothers even got the news. Up until the 17th century.
It makes sense. So I guess, basically when the sultan dies, first one to the throne basically is going to win out. They're going to hold the power over everyone, I guess, in that castle, I guess in the capital there. They're more well protected, I guess, makes sense. That's kind of very interesting. But yet the other brothers still have a claim to it, so I'm sure there's still, like you've seen in the past, like civil wars that go on.
A new sultan would kill his brothers to prevent any chance of internal strife. Lack of concrete succession rules and willingness of mothers to protect their sons from being murdered was going to have an impact on the Ottoman internal politics sooner or later. Historian Leslie Pearce states that by the mid-16th century, the very essence of the Ottoman state was changing. The empire was transitioning from a military state into a bureaucratic state, since further territorial expansion of the Ottoman Empire, particularly towards the west, was getting increasingly problematic and unlikely. Transition into a bureaucratic state was inevitably going to increase the role of institutions, and the harem was one of the institutions which was going to become more prominent in connection with the transition.
Okay.
This process started during the rule of Suleiman the Magnificent. We cannot tell the story of the Sultanate of Women without talking about Hürrem Sultan. A slave woman named Roxolana of Ruthenian origins probably entered the harem when she was in her teens. Roxolana got a new name, Hürrem, the Cheerful One, and very soon rose through the ranks of women in the harem. However, by the time she became one of Sultan Suleiman's favorites, one of his consorts, Mahidevran, had already given birth to a son, Mustafa. Soon, Hürrem became the favorite of the Sultan and gave birth to 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl, in an unprecedented break from the tradition of sultans' consorts giving birth to only 1 child for him.
Wow. I was about to say, like, hold on a second, you're just kind of contradicting yourself, but I mean, if you're the sultan, like, it's your rules, right? I mean, I guess that's more of a guideline. If he wants to have more kids with one woman, who's going to say no, right?
Hürrem became the most powerful person in the harem, especially following the death of Suleiman's mother, Sultan Hafsa. In 1534, Sultan Suleiman broke with another tradition of the Ottoman Empire and legally married Hürrem after setting her free from formal slavery. Hürrem Sultan became the first consort to become a Haseki Sultan, making her equal in status to European empresses. Unlike previous concubines and lovers of sultans, Hürrem moved into the imperial Topkapi Palace and got closer to the center of political power in the Ottoman Empire. In another break from tradition, she did not leave with her sons on their regional governorship assignments and stayed back in Constantinople. Suleiman and Hürrem enjoyed a loving relationship. Hürrem was said to be a smart and intelligent person, turning into a political confidant of Sultan Suleiman and an important political player in the capital. Letters from
I guess, it's also a good thing because, he has one more person on his side that he basically has absolute trust with, because all these other, I guess, women that took off to their sons, different kids by different mothers, sons by different mothers, they're probably all out to kind of get, each other. They're out for their own good. But she has all her, they're all her kids out there, and I'm sure like the camaraderie is way a lot more closer and tight knit. And it probably seems like more of a trusting kind of circle, I would think. Anyway.
Hürrem and Suleiman proved that she was advising him on politics and internal events. Some claim that Hürrem influenced Suleiman into ordering the killing of the Sultan's oldest son, Mustafa, and Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha, in order to ensure that one of her own sons survived and became a new sultan.
Wow.
Hürrem Sultan was influential even in the foreign affairs of the Ottoman Empire. Her Ruthenian origins was one of the factors behind the very friendly relationship between the Ottomans and Poland. Hürrem was the first consort known for having direct correspondence with a foreign leader, as 2 of her letters to the Polish king, Sigismund II, have survived. In these letters, she congratulates the king on ascending to the Polish throne and sends assurances of friendship between the 2 states.
Okay.
When you've got an edge, you color outside the lines. And the new Chase Slate Edge is designed to help you.
Hürrem Sultan died in 1558, but her loving relationship with Suleiman the Magnificent and her political acumen ushered in a new era in Ottoman history, the Sultanate of Women. Following the death of her mother Hürrem, Mirima Sultan became the most influential woman in the realm. She was
Okay, so Sultanate of Women, it's not just one person, it's basically a position. Okay.
married to a Ottoman governor of Croatian origin, Rustem Pasha, who later rose to the position of Grand Vizier. While Rustem Pasha was a capable man, Hürrem and Mirima's support was important in his rise. Mirima was unique, as she was neither a Haseki nor a Welida, but still had massive political influence and financial influence due to being one of the richest individuals of the empire. Even after the deaths of her father, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, and her husband, Rustem Pasha, Mirima Sultan maintained her influence, as her brother Selim II ascended the throne and sought her advice and financial support. Mirimer has also been attributed by historians for influence in foreign policy. In the 1560s, she tried to urge her father for another campaign against Malta and promised him to finance the construction of 400 ships from her own pocket. She played a key role in the normalization of relations between the Ottoman Empire and its vassal, the Republic of Regisa. Nubanu Sultan, wife of Selim II, was another prominent figure of the Sultanate of Women. Her origin is still disputed, as there are versions of her being of Jewish, Venetian or Greek descent. She was sent to Konya to Prince Selim's harem. Nubanu was known for her beauty and intelligence, and soon became the favorite of Selim, and gave birth to 3 of his children, including the future
Alright, sorry about that. Anyways.
To 3 of his children, including the future Sultan Murad III. Once Selim II became the Sultan, Nubanu moved together with him to Topkapi Palace as the Haseki Sultan. Nubanu Sultan's influence particularly increased following Mirimer Sultan's death. Selim II's reign was short, and Nubanu did everything possible to make sure that her son, Murad, became the next emperor. It is said that Nubanu Sultan hid the fact of Selim's death for 12 days until Murad had arrived in the capital. During Murad III's rule, Nubanu Sultan's power only rose, as her political influence could only be matched by that of...
That is so smart. And you could tell she held a whole lot, a bunch of influence, because I guess the people around her in the castle or whatnot, no one else like said a word or a peep. Because obviously she's not the only one who's going to know he died. I wouldn't think so. I mean, a bunch of others must have known inside, but, you know, I guess they're pretty tight-knit that nobody wanted to cross her, or there was nobody that did not like her kind of thing. So, anyways, that's pretty cool.
Of experienced Grand Vizier Sokolu Mehmed Pasha. In terms of the Sultanate of Women, Murad III is notable for the transfer of the harem into the Topkapi Palace, a move which only increased the influence of the harem on the governance of the Sublime Porte. Walida Sultan Nubanu was active in directing foreign affairs of the state as well, as she is known for corresponding with the Queen of France, Catherine de' Medici, along with being an advocate of good relations with Venice, something which might have been caused by her possible Venetian origin. She was also known for fighting against the influence of Murad III's only concubine in his early rule, the Albanian-born Safiya Sultan, who became Haseki Sultan after giving birth to a son. Nubanu Sultan was unhappy that Murad III remained devoted to Safiya and had only one heir, and basically forced him to have sexual relations with other women of the harem in trying to diminish the influence of Safiya Sultan. The latter became truly influential only after the death of Murad III and the ascension of her son, Mehmed III, to power. Like her predecessor, Safiya Sultan was very powerful and had a great deal of influence over her son. During her tenure as Walida Sultan, she had a high degree of control over Ottoman finances and political matters, as Mehmed III would give almost all power to his mother during his travels and campaigns. Safiya Sultan actively pushed for good relations with Venice, along with being known for having correspondence with the English Queen Elizabeth I, who gave her a carriage as a present, which Safiya Sultan often used in her travels inside Constantinople, a thing unheard of in the conservative Ottoman Empire.
That's kind of cool how, like, they're like, I get almost like pen pals, the relationship they have with, like, queens and that of, like, other countries far away. I think that's pretty impressive, and it definitely makes sense that they're so close, you know, and not just send them off. I mean, it definitely helps with relations, you know, around the globe, you know, when, you know, a queen, or, you know, can kind of talk to each other, maybe like a better understanding, you know, 2 women talking instead of, like, you know, 2 guys. I know she's not queen, she's a, but you know what I'm saying. Anyways.
The period of Safiya Sultan's rule is remembered for instability, as numerous Grand Viziers had been appointed and removed, often within a few months of starting their duties. Her influence was highly unpopular among the Ottoman military class. When in 1603, Safiye Sultan's grandson, Ahmed I, came to power, she was banished to the old palace and was removed from the seat of power for good. Ahmed I was fond of one of his concubines, Kushem, of Bosnian, Mauryan or Greek descent, and possibly his legal wife, who bore him 7 children, including 4 sons, and was titled Haseki Sultan. Despite his affection for Kushem, Ahmed I was not interested in sharing his power with the women of the court, and his 14-year rule would be remembered as a period of interruption of the Sultanate of women. Nevertheless, she might have had some influence over Ahmed I's refusal to continue the tradition of fratricide in the Ottoman ruling dynasty, possibly in order to protect her own children.
Huh. Interesting.
From an early age, I felt I was meant for more in this life.
Ahmed I's death paved the way for a series of succession crises, mentally unfit sultans, and general instability in the Ottoman Empire. Following a very short reign, Ahmed's brother Mustafa I was deposed, and Ahmed's son from another concubine, Osman II, became the new sultan. Despite only being his stepmother, Kushem had certain influence over Osman II, who grew up in the same harem quarters and had an affinity towards Kushim. But only 4 years into his reign, Osman II was murdered by the Janissaries for attempting to reform the Ottoman military. While Kushem Sultan had retired to the old palace during the reigns of Mustafa I and Osman II, her political influence was still prominent, as she was part of the group which deposed Mustafa I after his short second reign. Now Kushem Sultan became the Walida Sultan and the official regent of her underage son, Murad IV. Kushem Sultan was the de facto ruler of the Ottoman Empire in this period, as she would attend the divan, meetings of the ministers of her son, behind curtains covering her from the other participants of the meetings. After Murad IV came of age, he removed his mother from power, who nevertheless was able to persuade him against killing his brother, Ibrahim. But Murad's early death led to Ibrahim becoming crowned, despite the fact that he was utterly unfit for reigning. Kushem Sultan was aware of this and did her best to rule in his stead, while encouraging Ibrahim I to entertain himself with the women of the harem instead of ruling. Very soon, another clique aiming to depose her son gathered and informed Kushem Sultan of their intentions, to which she agreed despite being his mother. But yet again, Kushem Sultan would become a regent, this time to her grandson, Mehmed IV, who was only 7.
Man, she seems like a survivor. Part of me just thinks like, I don't know, she's all in it for herself kind of thing, but another part of me thinks she's definitely in for it for her country and wanting the best for the country or the empire, and just for the best in general. And these sultans are just not living up to her expectations, maybe. Maybe they just weren't that great in general. So part of me doesn't know really kind of what to think like really great things of her, or kind of like like think that something else, or think not so good things about her. I don't know.
7 years old at the time of his ascension. Nevertheless, Kushem Sultan now had a female rival, Turhan Sultan, Mehmed's mother, who did not want to cede control to her mother-in-law. The competition between the two wreaked havoc on the state, as the Ottoman Empire was suffering from internal strife and rebellions. Both sides plotted against each other, and in the end, a group of Turhan Sultan's supporters managed to get into Kushem Sultan's chambers and murder her in 1650.
The fact that Kushem didn't already step down and let them kind of have their power, their time and power, makes me think she's more in it for kind of for herself, kind of thing, Because I guess it's not really her role. I don't know. Once you get power, you don't want to give it away, kind of thing. But man, she's dead, man. She survived a while, though. I was definitely impressed.
51. Immediately after this, Turhan Sultan exerted influence over political affairs in the Ottoman Empire, but 5 years later, Koprulu Mehmed Pasha was appointed Grand Vizier, while Turhan Sultan basically retired from politics. This is considered to be the end of the Sultanate of Women. There are numerous factors that made the Sultanate of Women possible in the Ottoman Empire. What started as a story of love between arguably the most powerful and influential Ottoman Sultan, Suleiman the Magnificent, and his legal wife Hürrem, led to more than 100 years of women's domination in the Ottoman Empire. Moving of the imperial harem to the imperial palace, breaking with the tradition not to marry.
I can see like the women having so much power because usually the men are out on conquest with their armies and trying to take over things, while you have the women are at home, kind of like whispering and making all like the inside connections with like important people from the rest of the country. So they can have their fingers in everything while the husband's out, fighting war. And I guess women in general just have a little bit a different kind of influence than a man has. So definitely interesting.
Or have more than one child with each woman of the harem, ending the practice of fratricide, ceasing to send heirs to Anatolian provinces, and a series of unfit and weak rulers are among the key factors behind the Sultanate of Women. Walida sultans and Haseki sultans ruled as regents, deposed grand viziers, plotted deposition of sultans, and advocated for war or peace with foreign countries. Historians still dispute whether the Sultanate of Women was one of the causes of the prolonged decline of the Ottoman Empire, or whether the women of power actually saved the port from chaos and disintegration amidst the period of child sultans and unfit rulers. Along with having immense political and financial power, Walida and Haseki sultans also funded the construction of monuments, public works, and engaged in charity to sway public opinion in their favor. Mosques, schools, public baths, and foundations had been built in this period, and some bear the names of their sponsors. Speaking of sponsors, thanks to Established Titles for sponsoring this video.
Wow, is that it? Yeah.
On the way, so make sure you are subscribed and...
Okay, so I'm curious, are those watching, do you think that the women had a good impact or a bad impact? Because after the Magnificent, I think things started kind of going they start kind of going downhill. I'm trying to remember, I've just been through all these videos, but they said that they're the ones they had it start to go downhill, or they're the ones pretty much held together to where it didn't really fall apart. I think that they were a good thing. I think from this world, I only have this video to kind of watch, but it seems like they've kind of held things together. All these things could have been a lot worse for the Ottoman Empire if these women didn't have their fingers in the power. But anyways, let me know what you guys know below. And definitely interesting to kind of see that the women's state in the affairs of things in the Ottoman Empire. Definitely really cool to hear, because we didn't really, throughout these wars, didn't really hear much of it at all, about influence and everything. But anyways, guys, hit that like and subscribe button below. Let me know your thoughts below, like I said. And yeah, catch you guys in future videos. Peace. Thank you for watching.